Really, what's going to be a successful season for Jimmy Lake? And what's the future hold for the Husky football team? Now, as for the success question, I think the answer is it could be multiple things. What I'd really like to see is for the Huskies to win the Pac 12 conference and get to the college football playoffs. Now, if they simply win the Pac 12 conference and go to the Rose Bowl or one of the other New Year's Six bowl games, not in the playoffs, then I would probably still call that season a success. So the real measure I feel is going to be winning the Pac-12 championship for the Huskies. And I think they're completely capable of doing that. I don't think there's a single team really in the Pac-12 that's millenniums or miles ahead of this Husky football team. If you take a step back and look at last year, in all honesty, could have won the conference last year had the COVID outbreak kind of not canceled their last game and then forced them not being able to play in the conference championship. Now, looking at this Husky football team, and then you can also look at the Husky basketball team. And I see a similarity between these two teams that you really don't want to see. And that's that the past is brighter than the future. For football, it works a little bit better. As for basketball, the past really hasn't been that great either. But the future for basketball doesn't look great with poor recruiting and not showing great development or coaching with who they have. For football, the past was good. I mean, you look back 2016, they were in the college football playoffs. After that, they followed it up with a few New Year's Six bowl game appearances. Now, they never won any of those. And I'm not one to give a participation trophy, but in this case, I mean, they played great teams, played Alabama, Ohio State, some of these top teams. And in some of those games, they competed well. They were just outmatched by talent. Now, looking from that to the future for UW football doesn't look that bright, in my opinion. Now, a lot of people might be mad at this, but it's simply facts, I think. Jimmy Lake needs to prove himself as the right coach this year. And he didn't shine last year in his first year coaching. I think he leaned on the run too much. He had poor clock management. And he hasn't really shined in recruiting. And that's a major reason that this team doesn't have a bright future. Really, that's the main one, the poor recruiting. 2020 ended being a solid class, but 2020 wasn't completely him, as really a lot of these guys had kind of already gotten on board with UW before that. But you look at some of them like Savell Smalls, Jalen Millen, Roma Dunze, these guys all made impacts from day one. So that's great. But 2021 is more of Lake's class. Really, he really recruited these guys completely more than Chris Peterson recruiting some of those 2020 guys. And his 2021 class is smaller than you would like to see with only 15 recruits, but I'll give him some slack there and really not critique that too much, as it's a different time with the eligibility being changed and having these seniors come back. So you really couldn't have as big of a class. The issue that I have with and his recruiting is not so much the players that he signed, but the guys he missed out on. This was a year where the Huskies couldn't whiff on recruiting. There were 3 of the top 10 guys, I believe they all were, in the nation in Washington. 3 guys in the Huskies' own backyard that they needed to get. If they had gotten those 3 guys, the Huskies could be on the national stage, national news, getting praise and being looked at as a real contender. But what did the Huskies do? Well, they went 1 for 3. They whiffed. They missed out on Emeka Ibuka. Now, all signs point towards JT going to Ohio State or maybe Alabama, but definitely not UW. So really, it looks like they'll be getting 1 from the top 3, and that 1 is Samford. Now, if you'd asked me which one of those three I would like to have the most, I would have picked Heward. He's the quarterback in the group, and in my opinion, a QB really is the only position on a college football team where they can make a big difference by themselves. But Heward was also really the guy they probably needed to recruit or put less effort into getting him at UW. Now, this again, I don't have as any evidence to back this up, and I'm not saying the Huskies didn't need to recruit him or didn't need to convince him, but I think he needed less convincing of the scheme and persuading to get on board with the coaches than these other recruits like JT and as Heward's a legacy guy. And by that I mean Heward's dad played for UW, uncle played QB at UW. He grew up a Husky fan, grew up watching Husky highlights of his dad and uncle playing. If Sam Heward didn't have that connection to UW, then I mean, maybe he would still end up at UW, but I think he probably would have given another look to a lot of other schools because UW's offense isn't an offense that a QB wants to play in who wants to go to the NFL. The Huskies are a run first offense. They're not an offense where a QB is going to get these huge numbers and get on the like board of NFL teams. So really, that's why I feel Heward probably needed less convincing than JT did, and Mika Egbuka. And Mika Egbuka probably needed the most as he's in Heward's boat. He's a wide receiver. He is a guy who wants to be in a pass first offense. He's in an offense that's electric, an offense where he's going to get noticed by NFL teams by putting up huge numbers season in and season out. So the Huskies don't run that offense. You've got a head coach who comes into a press conference wearing a hat that says run the damn ball. Jimmy Lake's a defensive-minded coach. You can't change that. An offense often from a defensive-minded coach relies on the run game. It's old school. That's what Jimmy Lake is, old school. That's why Mika didn't commit. And I wasn't shocked when he didn't commit. Now, the loss of JT, that's the bigger concern to me. The number 1, 2, or 3, or just a top 4 guy in the nation is a guy you need to get, especially when he's at the defensive line position, which is a position that the Huskies have shown promise in developing guys and getting them to the next step. You got Danny Shelton, Vita Vea, good games, Levi Jones this year. All these guys in the NFL are going to the NFL. Some of them making splashes. Yet you got JT here in your backyard choosing one of these national powerhouse schools like Alabama, Ohio State, over UW. That's more of a red flag and mark against Jimmy Lake than anything else. Not being able to get the big fish at the position that UW has been great in recent years. That's why, as of now, looking into the future from today, I'm not looking forward to it. I think the Huskies are going to need a big change or something unexpected to happen in order to have a successful season in the near future. Now, this current season, I think that could be a success because of the talent they have. But you look 2 years down the road, 3 years, 4 years down the road, unless they can transition and become a great recruiter, then it might not be happy times. The Huskies haven't built a dynasty like Clemson, like Alabama, like Ohio State. They've built a bump. And you ride that bump up, you get to the peak. The peak for the Huskies was the college football playoffs. From that, they hung up there for one of those New Year's Six bowl games. But now the Huskies are on the wrong side of that peak, and they're heading downhill. And it's